So I'm sitting here with David Rudlin from URBED, who's just been presenting his paper at the conference on how to grow a garden city. And David, it seems to me that you didn't really grow a garden city at all in your Wilson Prize. You actually created an urban extension.
Indeed, yes. I mean, a lot of people noticed this when we won the Garden City Prize, that they hadn't actually written an essay about garden cities. Because actually, we say very clearly in the essay that garden cities are not the most sustainable way to build new settlements. We built new towns, which were fine, but in the current world, when there isn't a massive amount of public subsidy available, building a freestanding settlement in the field, in the middle of nowhere, which of course you would do because you want to have no objectors, is the recipe for an unsustainable place. The world's changed since the new towns were built, and we need to expand existing places. So we said, and it was a turn of phrase really, that the entire town was a garden city. And so taking a city of 200,000 and doubling it in size, created a garden city in the true sense of Howard, as opposed to creating a rather isolated new town. So
you call yourself an urbanist. So this is how you square urbanism with concreting over the green belt around Oxford or other towns.
Yeah, shocking that we should be suggesting this. I mean, we showed that you could double the size of Uxcester, which was our notional town, but the same would hold true of York or Oxford, by taking only 5% of the green belt. We're not by any means concreting over the green belt, and much of the green belt is actually just ploughed land. You know, it's not particularly rich agriculturally, it's not particularly rich in terms of its ecology or its scenery, and actually we should be finding a way of allowing that land to come, some of that land to come forward, not all of it obviously, so, and doing so which expands existing city. So I mean, Garden City has the word city in it, which is why as an urbanist I think it's quite appropriate for me to talk about them, because it's not all about the garden, it's all about how you create a city and how do you make a city work.
And there's quite a big emphasis in your Wilson Prize paper, and indeed your paper to this conference, around land value. You mentioned it already, and land value capture. If you look at all the entries to the Wilson Prize, actually I think it's probably fair to say that the majority of the entries mention something around land value capture. Why do you think that's such an important point?
Because it's unfinished business. The British planning system was designed to capture land value. It nationalised development land rights, and therefore the land value became a government asset that it creates. And so every time we give someone planning permission, we are giving back that value. We are redistributing the value to people who get planning permission. And that was always supposed to be, I mean, people obviously need an incentive to bring their land forward for development, but they also, the idea of that land value was to be available for public good, to create infrastructure, to create schools and so on. And the system was never completed. It never happened. I mean, it happened and then didn't work, the betterment value and so on. And so I think there is almost universal acceptance that we need to do something about this. And hardly any political will to actually take that up. I mean, the Lyons Review for the Labour Party before the last election, Lyons suggested land value capture.
Allegedly.
Well, so we're told.
In the draft.
So in the draft, but the shadow cabinet said take it out because it's too politically hot to deal with. We can't do that. And so if the Labour Party can't deal with this, maybe under Corbyn they would do, but at the moment I can't see it coming forward. It needs to, but I can't see how it happens.
So lots of the questions in the conference floor following your talk touched on regional planning, why it might be so important, and the sort of death of regional planning, if you like, or the more than local element. And also we touched on local plans, how they do and don't work in that context. You were very clear in your view.
Yeah,
local plans don't work was your basic thesis.
Local plans are great, but they're hopeless at doing stuff across borders. And you can't plan towns within administrative boundaries which actually don't relate to the active functional area of the town. We clearly need a way of planning across borders. We used to have structure plans, we used to have regional plans. I don't care how we do it, but we need a system to actually understand how somewhere like Oxford can grow, because at the moment it is entirely strangled within its administrative boundaries, with only the duty to cooperate, which is not working, with 4 hostile surrounding authorities. And that simply is a recipe for things not working. So we need to deal with that. I mean, the depressing thing is that there are a number of things that I've talked about which are politically impossible, the land value capture being one of them. Regional planning is a completely dirty word in terms of government, and the third one is greenbelt. I'm treading on sacred territory all over the place here.
Absolutely, sacred cows burning everywhere. And you contrasted what's happening in Cambridge with Oxford, and made. So here's the answer, perhaps just structural. We just need to structure because you made the point that in Cambridge you've got one authority looking at all the land around, whereas in Oxford you have this issue of the line being at the edge of the last garden,
yeah,
and then different authorities controlling the land around the city. So is the answer perhaps just to change the boundaries?
Change the boundaries is something that what we used to do. I mean, that was very much. I mean, Sheffield took on an urban extension in the 1930s and then encompassed it into Sheffield administrative area. That's how we used to deal with this stuff. I think we find it much more difficult to do that now. But yeah, changing the boundaries would help. I mean, Cambridge had a confluence of political will, of an easier conversation between two authorities rather than five, and a recognition that they needed to do something. And of course, the university was very much involved in the whole Cambridge Horizons process.
They owned a lot of the land as well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the Oxford Mail ran a story about Oxford, a delegation from Oxford Council going to Cambridge to learn good experience, which of course it wasn't seen as very helpful in Oxford. Of, you know, why would we go and learn from Cambridge? But the truth is that Cambridge has done what Oxford needs to do.
And we ended with a conversation really about planners and the quality of planning and the quality of planners and whether they have the skills and confidence to do the kind of master planning or proper planning, as you call it, that so excited you and drew you to college. How do we get back to that?
I think if we started doing proper planning, the calibre of planners available to us would start to rise because people would be drawn to the profession. I don't want to be rude to planners. I mean, I've spoken
You're
to...
a planner.
I'm a planner, absolutely. And I've spoken to rooms full of council officers, all of whom are desperate to do the right thing and all of whom are desperate to take a more imaginative, strategic approach to their towns. And so there's a huge amount of talent within the profession, but they're beaten down by the system. They're beaten down by the bureaucracy of the system, and it's no wonder that many of the brightest and best will leave to join private practice, where they get paid a lot more. You know, profession doesn't get paid well either. But I think if we started doing proper planning, I think we could change that. I think we could start to raise the profile of the profession, and we could start to bring people in. And I think that we definitely need to do that.
And does that mean we need to move towards a more, frankly, subjective, more maybe gut feel based, less evidence based, less worried about the evidence based type of planning, more kind of big moves, bigger plans, confidence in and professional opinions, less bothered about having to back everything up with an evidence base?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's partly the result of the adversarial system. I think it's partly sort of insulating yourself from legal challenge, which they're paranoid about doing, because as soon as you get a legal challenge, you're unsound in terms of your housing numbers or your plan. Then you know the gates are open and you lose control of your planning system. So I can see why they're worried about that, but they need to have a system where it's less adversarial and more based upon imagination, creativity, and so on, rather than this sort of go through the process, do all the studies, and you'll get the right result, because you don't.
And earlier we heard from Kate Barker, and she was talking about having to get back to looking at demand, not just need. Let's be more, aspirational, and actually try and cope with demand, not just talk about need. And I saw a sort of synergy there, perhaps your paper, in the way you were talking about positive attitudes to growth and cities having to plan for proper levels of growth, and how that actually is the lifeblood of the city. So there's a sort of conjoining there of the papers, perhaps, the thoughts of Kate Barker and yourself.
Absolutely, and I agree very much with what Kate was saying about the need to build ahead of projections, because projections just encapsulating previous trends. And of course, if your previous trend is decline, then what your projections do is perpetuate that decline. And so there's a big north-south divide here, because actually a lot of the debate is about that overpressured south, whereas in northern areas, I mean, lots of towns are still losing population. The cities are growing now, but they have huge scope to grow further. And I think in the north, the growth agenda is a much easier sell.
Yeah, so when you characterise in your talk, you characterise Manchester as perhaps being very pro-growth, its recent moves towards a unitary authority and plan, and you characterise that as perhaps standing apart from other places. I
think it definitely does, and I think that would be recognised by many places. And actually, all the big cities are thinking about combined authorities. They've been encouraged to do so by Osborne in terms of from the Treasury, and so I think that is very much the way forward. And Manchester, I think, has stolen a march on the other cities in the way that Cambridge stole a march on Oxford. I think they've shown the way forward.
So you're positive about the future, cautious about the future, or pessimistic about the future?
Cautiously positive.
Cautiously positive. David Rudlin, thank you.
Thank you.